Oh, hey, I'm glad you're here. Growing up in a video store next to an arcade, it's easy to understand why I love the intersection of games and movies. Over the years, there have been so many movies based on video games, from Far Cry to Blood Rain to Alone in the Dark and House of the Dead. And wait, those are all Uwe Boll films. Well, there's also Sonic the Hedgehog, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Street Fighter, and so many more. But I also love films where games are involved, but they're not necessarily real games. Like Cloak and Dagger was a huge one for me as a kid, or The Last Starfighter was another one we watched all the time, and to some extent, the film we discuss in this episode. But before we get to that, please feel free to pump another quarter in this podcast cabinet so we don't have a game over and we can keep on making episodes. And you can show support to VHS by supporting our sponsor, Marshall's Hot Sauce. Go to marshallshotsauce.com. You get 20% off by entering the name of the podcast at checkout. So don't skip that ad. You're also supporting small farms by supporting Marshalls, so that's always a good thing. You can also join our Patreon, where you'll find bonus episodes, articles about movies we don't cover here. That's patreon.com/VHUS. Or go to our Threadless shop. All of our logos and original episode artwork is available on shirts and totes and more. So help us spread the word of the podcast by going to vhspodcast.threadless.com. And now, please enjoy Arcade.
Innocence can be hell. Innocence can be hell. Can be hell. Innocence can be hell. Innocence can be hell.
Greetings and salutations. This is VHS, and I'm your host, Dirk Marshall. Season 16 continues with guests selecting movies from my movie episode wish list, and this episode's guest is host of the Dead Ringers podcast, is Nolan McBride. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
How's Dead Ringers going?
We're on a little bit of an unplanned hiatus just because we've all been busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're actually planning to start recording again next week. That was the thing I had to figure out with this. It was like we were just starting to figure out when we were going to record it, and I was like, with my luck, we're going to plan it the exact same week. I've already committed to record with you, but it worked out great.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, we're going to be ramping back up, and I think I don't know if I can fully commit to it because it's one of those things I feel like I always want to go back on, but I think I've convinced myself I'm not going to try to go to Fantastic Fest this year. And I feel like that throws off recording a little bit in the Halloween season. So I'm just kind of like looking forward to all right, just getting back on track and then just doing the rest of the year. So yeah.
And there's 5 of you, is that correct?
There's technically 7. Thomas wasn't on much last year because he had some personal stuff going on, and my wife has been on less just because she's also been a little more stressed with work stuff. But so there's probably, I think there's 5 of us that have a little more capacity right now, but I still always think of Thomas and my wife as being members on it, so they can always jump back in whenever they have capacity. So yeah, there's technically 7, but somewhere between 5 and 7. It's a lot.
It's a lot of people to try to schedule. I mean, I've, for this season, tried doing some double episodes and just getting 2 guests with, the same, time zone or, time slot even. It's really hard. So I understand the struggle.
Yes. Yeah, that is why we have also, the decreasing guest was purely a logistical thing where we have been, with as many of us as there is, planning maybe only a week or 2 out in advance. So then it's like, oh, we don't have any time to ask a guest. Or if we do, they're like, yeah, I can't do it in a week. So it's just been it's harder to pull that off. But yeah, we're working back at it.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for more Dead Ringers podcast. I have my ears all ready for it. Now, I believe for this situation, you chose arcade or shortened a list down to arcade. I'm curious how you recall.
There was a couple on there,
Okay.
but this one stuck out because it was clearly about a video game sort of killer, and then it was Albert Pune,
Yeah.
and I would not call myself like an Albert Pune expert by any means. I've really only discovered him within the last couple of years,
Mhm.
and a lot of that really thanks to mutual friend Mike Scott.
Right.
And I would even say, like, if you want to learn more about Albert Pune, I think didn't him and Patrick do an F This Movie episode
They did, yeah.
one or two June exploitations ago on Albert Pune?
I couldn't tell you
And I
what it
think
was.
that's what got me to watch a couple more of his things. So, like, yes, I'm relatively new. I've probably only seen like four, but I really enjoy all of them. And again, he's someone who is working in the low budget space and is always seems to be punching way above his weight, even though he's like given kind of shit to work with. I mean, I think infamously Cyborg was the
Slinger.
leftovers of Masters of the Universe sequel, right? Something like that.
Cyborg, well, he made Cyborg, some of the sets I think were reused from Master of the Universe, but
Okay.
it was like
Okay.
his own script and everything, but then they took him off it and recut the whole thing. So you can find
Oh, I didn't even know that.
yeah, you can find the Slinger cut where he puts back in his original source stuff. Some of it's super, super rough. And then the score was crazy, way different than what the Cyborg version is. I think it's super fascinating to compare the two, and I like watching the Slinger cut, but for some people they're like, this isn't finished. And I'm like, no, but you actually get to see Albert's like vision for the whole thing. And it's it's very different. It's cool.
Okay. Yeah, I really had no clue about that, so that's even more interesting. That also sounds a little bit like what the assembly cut for Alienware. I know that's a lot of people's issues where the assembly cut is not as polished, but that's a case where, like, for me, that clarifies a lot of things and make it work better for me, even though it is like a more unfinished product.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think it's unfortunate when that type of stuff happens, but I love when we have a chance to kind of see what the intent initially was and see that vision from that creator. Growing up in a video store, there was two things I really loved. Well, many, but Charles Band and his work with Full Moon, and after seeing Nemesis, a man named Albert Pune, and this brings both of those things together. And if you watch the making of Arcade, you see like Albert's really playing with like cutting edge technology when they were making this film, which is very exciting because that's not often the case for him. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So you hadn't seen Arcade prior to this.
nope.
Fantastic. Well, people were brought together by the film Arcade from 1993. The synopsis is a virtual reality game begins taking over the minds of teenagers, which is fair. At the time of this recording, you can find Arcade pretty much anywhere. I got a super
Yeah.
cheap DVD. It's not difficult to track down.
Yeah, I think I watched it on Freevee, which is the like
Yeah.
free app within Amazon, and I think it's also on Tubi, which is always the go-to.
Yeah, I hate Freebie. I get sucked into stuff sometimes because that's the only way I can see it, and it just drives me up the wall.
Yeah, I think the only reason I sometimes go with Freevee over Tubi is because I forget to sign into Tubi. And so with Freevee, I know I can save my progress, but yeah, I much prefer Tubi.
Yeah. Of
Now we're
course,
just saying weird, stupid words.
right.
Freevee and Tubi.
Freebie Tubi. They're all Teletubbies. At the time of this recording, I do have to urge you to support your local video stores like Movie Madness right here in Portland, Oregon. The film is directed by Albert Pune, who did a number of films: Nemesis, Cyborg, Sword and the Sorcerer, Dangerously Close, Radioactive Dreams. It goes on and on. He, like you said, is a person that could do a lot with very little, is incredibly inventive. He wasn't that old when he made this movie. I saw so many pictures of him towards the end of his life, and it was great to see footage from the making of this where he's just like spry, young, full of excitement to tell this story. Speaking of story, the idea comes from Charles Band of Full Moon, which produces the film, but the script is a David S. Goyer script from Dark Knight.
I think that was the other thing that drew me to this, was seeing this Goyer script, and I was like, holy crap. Because especially as from probably 8th grade on, I got really into comics. And so, yeah, David Goyer was a presence, as he was the like lead, the guy they called on to adapt a lot of stuff in the like late 90s, early 2000s. So I was just like, holy crap, I need to see his video game horror movie.
Yes, yeah. For people not familiar, Dark Knight, Batman Begins, Dark City, the 2022 Hellraiser, Blade 1 and 2, Death Warrant. These are all Goyer scripts.
Dark City. Dark City's
yep.
a good one.
Yeah. Our cast: Megan Ward from Encino Man, Joe's Apartment, Trancers, and Freaked. She's in this film as Alex. Peter Billingsley from Christmas Story and Dirt Bike Kid.
Holy crap. I think I saw that he was. I don't remember if I. No, you know what? I did see that he was in it beforehand, but then I saw his name pop up in the credits, and I was like, "Huh." I remember that name. It wasn't fully ringing the bell, and then he shows up looking like a. Well, we'll get there, but yeah,
Yeah.
he is just
We will.
interesting, very interesting.
Next we have Seth Green from Austin Powers, the Italian Job
Yes.
Party Monster Robot Chicken. But I also want to give him props as a director because I loved his movie Changeland. So if you haven't seen Changeland,
Oh, I didn't realize he directed.
yeah, it's a great little indie with Breckin Meyer, Macaulay Culkin, and Seth Green. I think he's in it. Yeah, it's good. It's about a guy that was
Okay.
going to go on a trip with his wife. She's leaving him, so he goes alone with his buddies, and they go to Thailand, and it's a beautiful little film. Next up, we have John Delancey, who was in Multiplicity, Crank, High Voltage, and Taking Care of Business. And then AJ Langer from People Under the Stairs, and Don Stark from That 70s Show, Peggy Sue Got Married, and Three Ninjas Kick Back.
Oh shit! I didn't even recognize that. Okay,
Yeah.
I did love Three Ninjas as a kid, though.
I just saw Don Stark in like a 90s or late 80s DTV video, and he's like a badass, and I was like, this is weird casting. But a little bit of trivia up top. This film was originally meant to be released in 1991. It was then pushed to 92, and then eventually 1993, and then 94. One of the major reasons for the delay was due to a major special effects sequence that looked a lot like the Tron light bikes. So Disney sued them. And despite the lawsuit with the light bike version, you can still find footage of it. And if you watch the making of the film, that's the part that they show instead of the chase scene that happens later on in the movie. So it's really confusing because you're like, why are there Tron light bikes here? But it's because that was like their big set piece.
Okay.
But they were sued by Disney, and the film was pushed back years and years and years. If you think about what was coming out in 1991, Arcade being a direct-to-video store's release totally makes sense. I mean, you've got like what, Air Bud coming out that year, but 93 we have Jurassic Park. It's a different playing field for
Yeah.
computer-generated effects.
And even from just like the technological perspective, like
Mhm.
this would be, it would feel almost ahead of its time in 91.
Yeah.
Whereas in 93, it kind of feels like it's just an also ran almost in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
era, even though it's not technically. Like it just feels like it's, I think it would just be maybe more noteworthy if it did actually come out when it came out.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's a lot of stuff that we'll talk about in this movie that in the early to mid 90s was very much a thing. And once you get to like definitely closer to 95, these things are way more dated. Even though 95 we get like Virtuosity and stuff that's like, they're
Yeah.
pushing that CG stuff, but they're not quite there. And so, people will make fun of the effects, but like this stuff was cutting edge at the time, and the people working on it really felt like they were doing something that was never going to be outdone, which is pretty cool.
And also, I'd rather see them go for it.
Yes.
Because again, like there's something about the like, I don't know. Obviously, again, towards the end, it gets a little more CG
Mhm.
gobbledygook kind of thrown in there. But like for the most part, they like are trying to like, I don't know, ground people in this virtual world. Even as silly as it looks now, it's still like I'd rather see them do that. Like
Same.
it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's no worse looking than like Shark Boy and Lava Girl or whatever,
Yeah. Or
it's-
like, even some Marvel stuff is, it's real sketchy.
yeah.
And it's like these movies get a ton of shit for looking that way, but it's like again, this had a personality.
Yeah, and like I mentioned Blade, I mean, some of the stuff that happens in Blade, we were all just like, we're going to let that pass. Like, we just kind of look the other way and go, yeah, that's fine. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm watching the film again. Like, you see it, you're like, we can all agree now that wasn't, okay, whatever. So let's just press play on Arcade. We start with futuristic metallic credits over a rad 90s screensaver of whirling circles. It's
A fractal.
it's a fractal. We get moody music, and then we pull out of someone's iris. We see our lead Alex, and we get voiceover.
I never believed in heaven.
We next see her mother dead in a chair. She's shot herself in the head. What a bummer
Yeah.
way to open a movie.
Yeah,
I
she's
love
like, I
it.
never believed in heaven.
Yes.
Like, oh man,
Wow.
that's okay. And then I think the follow-up is like, because my mom showed me hell. It's
Yes.
like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a pretty rad way to open it.
Yeah. It's very dark.
Yeah.
But I learned to believe in hell when Mom sent me there.
Next, we see that she is actually in a counseling session, and her mom is dead, and her dad is now mentally unwell, just to really drive home like how grim it is.
Yes, she calls him like flat out worthless at times.
Yeah.
Like he's like can't take care of himself. It's rough.
Yeah. We next hear cool alternative rock as we see high schoolers. Seth Green's there, welcomes Alex back to the friends, having a chat in some bushes, I think is what's happening.
Yes.
Greg tells Alex that she's all right. I called him Lo-Fi Skeet Ulrich is what I wrote down here.
Yeah, I could see it.
Right?
I feel like he's trying to talk very cool.
Yeah.
But like it's like he's not really doing enough to sell it, so it just sounds very weird.
Yeah. I was wondering if this
yeah.
was like a thing where people would try to talk cool in the 90s but end up just squinting. Like
Yes, that's what it felt like.
makes it
like
cooler.
that whole first, especially because then that's when Peter Billingsley shows up, and he at first I'm like, is he just the weird like quiet beat poet fan?
Right.
Until I realized like later he's like kind of doing a Steve Jobs thing. Even though I think that would have been, is that predate Steve Jobs? Was he? I honestly don't
Couldn't
remember
tell
when.
you.
But yeah, he's a little tech nerd basically. But yeah, at first he just seems like this weird aloof, like too cool for school. He's like an all black. But then he just has a completely opposite personality when you meet him.
Yeah, he's a blonde kid in sunglasses who's frowning, and I was like, who is that guy? Because I had forgotten that Peter Billingsley was in the movie until later on he removed his sunglasses, and I was like, oh, I got to go back in my notes because I just wrote blonde kid frowning in sunglasses.
Yes.
Because that's him. His character is so interesting in this because half the time I'm like, is he supposed to be in love with Alex? But it's not something they actually go for. Like she's still into Greg the whole time.
Yes, I had the same feeling where like there's even like a scene where they almost have like a confession to each other, but then it doesn't fully commit to it. So yeah, it's kind of like a weird, it feels like it meant to be more of a story about him trying to win over Alex, but it doesn't really focus on that.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a dick for a while.
Yes, it's true.
They
have a flyer for Dante's Inferno Arcade. It's a new game to experience, so we get more cool alternative rock as the kids walk to Dante's Inferno.
I love that you specifically called out the cool alternative rock because my notes for both of those were like moody alt rock as teens meet up outside school and something about like the alt rock as they walk to the beach, and it just hangs on that beach shot for a long time. And it felt like it was just to finish the song.
Yes. Yeah. Like they had it and they're like, we gotta play it. Just play it in there. Yeah. Seth runs into a punk guy and they argue in wild ADR.
Hey, Alex. Sorry, man, I didn't see you there.
Stilts. I thought I told you to stay out of here.
Well, I'm just, checking out the preview for Arcade. Check it out, it's gonna be in there. It's supposed to be real cool.
If it's so cool, then how come they're previewing it in this shithole?
Maybe if you weren't such a dick, you'd see how cool this place really is.
Give me a break, man. They got fucking Space Invaders in here. That shit's for retards.
So what are you saying? I'm like retarded? Is that what you're implying?
No.
Cool.
Now that I'm standing here, I'm noticing you're an ugly little fuck, and you're making me sick.
There's a ton of that in this movie in ways that where again, like in ways like you can just see they had to patch together some things because something didn't come through or they had to make some changes halfway through. So like there's very clear and kind of funny ADR scenes, but yeah, they're kind of endearing.
Yeah, I always love that because like you're saying, like they had to be resourceful. They have to make this work, and that's what happens. It always endears me more than makes me be like, oh no, like this is cheesy. Also do need to call out that Dante's is, I feel like it's I forget what people have called it, but is like a little teenager den of iniquity. Like it's the same thing you see in like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first movie where it's like they're all playing games and like everyone's passing out cigarettes to each other. It's kind of like a perverted version of the what is it, Fantasy Island from Pinocchio? Yeah. So like I love that it's just this like little arcade haven for teens. It's great. Yeah, growing up, our video store that I grew up in right next door was a place called Putt & Video, and so it was an arcade and miniature golf. And so
that's incredible.
Yeah, so my dad would be like, "Get out of my hair." He'd give me $1 and I'd go next door to the arcade. And it really was like, cuz I was little, so it was teenagers in there just like, and I don't remember smoke per se, but there might have been. And, some squares playing the miniature golf that was kind of very lo-fi miniature golf. And then all the cool people over there playing like the Journey arcade machine or Dragon's Lair and things like that. And then in the back was where I could get Laffy Taffy and jerky for $1. So that's where I spent most of my time. But it was very much like this, only not quite as dark. Don Stark intervenes as the owner, and the punk guy says, "Arcades suck." And then suddenly we hear an ominous voice say, "Try saying that to my face." And it's Arcade, who's voiced by Jonathan Fuller of Castle Freak, Pit and the Pendulum, and Blood Fist 4.
Well, your place sucks, man. Who gives a fuck about Arcade anyway?
Try saying that to my face.
Ooh, pretty scary.
What? That's funny.
Yeah.
He does have a great voice too. In like his introduction.
Yeah. I mean, all of the writing for this, clearly Goyer was like, it's like a Freddy Krueger arcade machine because this machine loves to call people bitch.
Yes. I was like, oh, the first time he said something like that, I was like, oh, they're just jumping straight to late era Freddy where he's just like, "What's up, bitch?"
Yeah.
Which gets weirder when you learn about the character later on.
Yes.
But like, I still am like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's good. Suddenly, John Delancey shows up and ushers the kids to an arcade VR machine, and Peter Billingsley asks what makes it so special.
So aside from the package, what makes Arcade so different?
Now there's a man after my own heart. Straight to the point. What makes Arcade different? It's the way it reacts. It responds like a human does. Each time you play it, it changes its strategy. It learns. It adapts. And it's all done in virtual reality. It's so real, you'll actually think that you're in the game board.
It's impossible.
You think so? Why don't you give it a go?
Show him what's up, Nick.
And in he goes. He puts on cyber gloves. They have an escape button. It's pretty magical. And we learn the game has 7 levels, which as the movie progresses, we learn these levels are like how to destroy Arcade, essentially. Like, it's
the whole metaphor, whatever, is so confusing. And I didn't even realize it until the second watch. I was like, oh, Dante's Inferno, 7 levels. Got it.
Yeah.
But then like the levels are like completely different things that feel like they're so unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they play them is so different. It's just like, it's the classic thing that I truly, truly love, which is like movies that are about video games or technology, but then like, it's usually not willful misunderstanding. It's like, we have to tell a story. So we're going to completely pervert whatever this thing is supposed to be. Like even Cronenberg's Existence is ostensibly about video games. And it's like, no, those are like weird flesh devices. And this is another thing where it's like, yeah, they're playing video games, but the game itself is just like walking down a spiky hall for the most part. But there's a lot more going on. It's just, it's the best.
Yes. So he begins to play, and the game refers to itself, "I am Arcade," which I love anytime you're going to speak in the third person. Level 1 is Corridors of Doom. Peter wakes up with a helmet on and is told if he lingers too long in a level that the Screamer will get him, which is actually a different Screamer than you see in any of the promotional materials for the movie, including the cover of the DVD, which is interesting.
And it's also funny because I know that there's a route in earlier games, but like specifically there's a game called Spelunky that is like a roguelike platformer, and if you stay on a level too long, a ghost starts coming after you. So that is like a classic video game thing of just like, if you stay in the level, they will send some other super powered enemy to try to kill you immediately. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah, my wife loves Miss Pac-Man, so I got her a Miss Pac-Man cabinet thing for our dining room, and it came with 10 games, and one of them is called Rompers, and you're going through this maze, pushing over walls on spiders and things, and if you stay too long, this vampire lady comes out and chases you around. So it's, that was 84 or something. So he's tasked with skateboarding through a corridor, which he does with little to no effort. In the making of, there's a great part where Peter Billingsley of A Christmas Story is showing off the skateboard where they've painted out the trucks so that they can key out the trucks with the background so it looks like they're floating. And it's like presented like, look at how cutting edge this is, which it was at the time. But the fact that it's Peter Billingsley doing it is talking about like, VR stuff. It's so weird and surreal. Like, it's great. I mean, it's worth it for the price of the DVD alone, just to watch the little making of thing for this film.
Well, like even casting him, everything he does is kind of weird because it's like, again, it's so hard to shake Ralphie from your mind. Like in all the notes, I just wrote Ralphie/Nick because I can't not think of him as Ralphie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he starts off as the very aloof guy, and then slowly is like, I'm the recognized best gamer in the group. Like, I'm a hardcore badass at playing games. It's just like, wait, what? This is still Ralphie?
Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's great.
There's a giant glowing sphere. He ejects out of panic and then goes, "You gotta try this thing." And I was like, that's amazing. So in goes Greg. The sales guy takes all the kids out and gives them free home versions of Arcade. Meanwhile, Greg plays the game. He's skating and then into the mouth of a robot alligator thing, which I guess they're calling the Screamer. It's pretty amazing, that sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because like everyone just abandons him. Yeah. But they're like, well, they're going to get him a home one, but they just fully leave him alone. And then like you can clearly see him like screaming, but they're all just like too excited about the game. They don't care.
So stoked. They get their home versions, and all they have to do is fill out a comment card. So that's awesome. They return, and then Greg is missing. So Alex goes home. Her dad's just spacing off on the couch. They don't make him look like a lush or anything. He's just like super, super depressed.
And tired. Yeah. It just seems like he's just like, he falls asleep on the couch and she treats it like he's the most shameful human being that's ever existed. You're like, whoa.
His wife committed suicide and they kept the chair. It's
right? Yeah, it's
pretty amazing.
They've got issues.
Yes. She goes upstairs and opens her home arcade kit. And Arcade says he has Greg and he wants his soul. It's like, oh, okay, well, how does he get the soul? We don't know.
Hello, Alex.
What?
I saw you watching me. I heard you are mine. It wants to play, just like your boyfriend did.
Where's Greg?
In here. He lost the game, and I won his soul. Let's see if you will be more of a challenge. Join us.
She wakes up in the game. She panics and leaps out of the game. And she calls, and Greg never went home. And then Arcade says, "He's right here, bitch." And it's like, oh man, Arcade.
He's right here, bitch.
And also, I think he says that part while she's playing, but at this point it starts like Arcade, because they've talked to him once, is now just like everywhere.
Yeah.
And like at first it's not clear if it's like, is she just hearing this repeated back in her head? But then it's like, no, sometimes he's directly talking to her and she responds and you're like, okay. And I think he even says right after that, he's like, I'm everywhere now. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it goes really quick. So she unplugs the game and leaves the house. She goes to Nick's house, and Nick is playing. He's seeing that screensaver from the beginning credits, and he says, it's beating like a heart. He's really impressed with this thing.
That was the thing that cracked me up, where he's like, oh, this fractal is like a screensaver, but it's like a beating heart. And he's like, this is the most brilliant game ever. And I'm like, what does that have to do with the game? You're just seeing a pretty thing. I love it. I love it. Again, that when people marvel at like technology that's to come that they don't even fully grasp is always like wonderful.
Yeah, and I loved living through the VR thing because it was like, I mean, you put on these gloves and you can touch things, and it's like everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the hugest thing. 30 years later, you get like VR headsets and stuff at home, but like for the longest time, only like maybe the nerdiest person on the planet would have like a VR set, and it would be like vector stuff. Like it wouldn't be like now where you see people just losing their mind and destroying their televisions.
Yeah. Well, one thing actually we passed up a little bit, but one thing I did love is when he did explain what made differed. I forget the Delancey. Yeah. When he explains what makes Arcade different, he's like, each time you play it, it changes its strategy, it learns, it adapts. The interesting thing is like that is a concept that did get implemented in games and was a big deal, but it's just like not the thing they thought it were going to be. Because like this was specifically, there's a thing called the game director, which was I think first sort of like pioneered with Left 4 Dead games.
Yeah.
So as you played through the levels, the game would, if like you were doing too well, the game would then push back on you by throwing more zombies at you. Or if it needed to let up, it would maybe give you a couple minutes to breathe. So like, I love that we eventually got there, but it's like, yeah, this was just like one thing in the midst of all these other technological advancements.
Right. They just knew. She gets him to turn it off, and she fills Nick in on what's going on.
I think the game is alive somehow. Just listen. Now, I hooked it up earlier this evening, and it said my name. I mean, just as I plugged it in, Nick, it said my name. How could it know that?
Alex.
And then I asked it where Greg was. And it said in here.
Alex, I think you're freaking out here. Greg's gone, and maybe he's in trouble, but it's not Arcade that's doing it.
It is.
How? Alex, it's a machine. Machines don't think. They're not alive. It's a good program. A brilliant program. And it was designed to act as if it were alive, but it's not alive.
Okay, so how did it know my name then?
Maybe you just imagined it. You're always imagining things. For Christ's sake, Alex, you're paranoid. Everything scares you.
You're just like my father. Okay, I've been having some problems lately. I've been spaced out sometimes. But I did not imagine this. I did not imagine this, Nick.
I do have parents, you know.
There, look. It turned itself back on.
No, it didn't. It's, just a faulty relay or something. It happens.
It's alive, Nick. It's listening to us.
Shut up! Enough.
And he doesn't believe her. She asks Nick to call their friends, and all of their lines are busy. So that proves that they all have phones, I guess. That's what they're going for. She leaves, and Nick tries to turn it off, but it won't turn off. And the next day at school, Stilts and Nick are the only two people that show up. And Alex is like, everyone disappeared. We have to get a list of everyone who was at Dante's, which I was like, how would you even... It was pitch black in there. Like,
did she go in and break in and steal the they didn't have a sign-in list, but ostensibly she just took the registry.
Yes, the registry at Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, this is everyone who signed in today.
Mm-hmm. So Nick and Alex go to investigate, and they start at Lori's. Through the window, they see her facing the glow of the television. Lori is out of it. She is seeing angels. She says, "Get out." And then we see in the TV static, we see Greg, and he's like, "Ah!"
Alex, don't leave me here.
You could leave Greg here, Nick, and have Alex all to yourself.
Change the channel.
Alex, if you won't play the game by my rules, then I'll play in your world.
Nothing's happening.
Love it.
He's trapped.
Yep, he's clearly trapped in the static. Arcade says, if you don't play by my rules, then I will play in your world. So pretty serious.
Incredible.
Suddenly the house is blue and lit up, and Nick smashes the TV, and then Lori has Arcade voice and says, "Poor babies," and collapses. It's a weird moment in the film.
Yes. Yeah, that's a scene too where I'm just like, I don't know exactly what happened, but then suddenly Ralphie fixed it by breaking the TV.
Yeah, and it's also a part of the film where I think gosh, I remember this being way wilder, and I feel like they're really cutting corners with what they're showing and whatnot. But that's because we haven't got to where things go.
Yeah.
But by this point, I'm always like, oh, I feel the restrictions of the budget. Like they couldn't go into the weird VR world more often, but they do, and they can, and they will.
Well, and it's interesting because I think this is the first time we really see, we saw Greg get disappeared, and obviously it's tried to entrance them or whatever, but we haven't really seen its effects. And this is the first time you see someone that's basically junky after playing the game, and it's just so reduced to nothingness. I don't know, she's just slobbering almost and just kind of falling apart.
Yeah, and I remember that concern with VR. People were like, well, the virtual reality is going to be so perfect and so amazing, people won't want to spend time in the real world, And I think that's what they're touching on with the glowing heart screensaver thing, or her being like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so... Because they're like, see, this is what it's going to do. It's going to rot your brains.
Yeah, there's another point about that. I think that'll come up later when we meet the developer. But
Yes. They turn around, and Lori's body's gone. And then Nick says, if we're going to do this, then we have to play the game. And they go to Vertigotronics.
Yeah. the way they just disappears without a trace makes sense. Makes sense. But I guess Greg did too. But like, I don't know. For some reason, just like the quick turnaround and it's gone felt so much more of like a weird rug pull instead of Greg's like, yeah, that makes sense. It sucked him up into the nothingness.
But like other films too, they would do the thing where they're sucked in like a vacuum cleaner effect, kind of thing, where you're like,
Yeah.
But this movie doesn't do that. You just turn around and they're gone. They're just like, oh, okay. And that's what I mean by like feeling like, oh, I think I can feel the tightness on the budget here because they just didn't have money. So they're like, we'll just whip pan, and then they're not there anymore, and then you just know she's gone. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, which works because that effect stands up still, like, whereas like the vacuum
Yeah.
cleaner one, we all know what that looks like. So they're through playing games. Oh, a game. Nolan, perhaps we should play a game. This is a game from our brain scan episode, so anyone that's listened at home, you have a leg up in the situation. All you have to do, Nolan, is tell me if this is a real or fake video game, and there's 10 choices.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Number 1, Toilet Kids.
Fake.
Real, from 1992. It's a vertical shoot 'em up of a kid flushed down a toilet and everything is crapping on you.
Incredible.
Yep. Number 2, The Tablecloth Hour.
All right, I'm gonna say fake again.
It's real. It's a Japanese arcade game where you're just trying to do that pull the tablecloth thing.
Uh-huh.
That's it. You just grab onto this thing on the arcade console and you pull the tablecloth and either the dishes fall over or they don't.
Is it like you have an hour to do it? Is there
No.
actually something related to the hour, or that's just the name?
That's just the name. Just the name
Okay,
from
okay.
Japan. Number 3, Scud Hammer.
I feel like it's got to be false, but I'm gonna go with true now.
It's true. This game had 3 buttons. You have rock, paper, and scissors. How that's Scud Hammer, I do not understand, but it is just rock, paper, scissors.
When is that one from?
I think that's also Japan, yeah.
Okay. I just can't believe some of these I feel like would almost make sense now because there's like a postmodern ironic sense.
Yeah.
But like the fact that these came out in the 90s or 80s seems
Yeah.
wild.
Yes, so true. Number 4, Butts and Dragons, The Seventh Gate.
All right, I gotta go fake. I
That's
gotta have one.
fake. I made that one.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I would still believe it
Okay.
though.
I know. That's the tricky part, is that they all sound real and fake at the same time. So there's really no right or wrong answer. Number 5, Tongue of the Fat Man, a.k.a. Modus Fight Palace.
Oh, they get me with the specifics. Let's go true.
Yes, from
real.
Activision. It looks like an early Street Fighter. So you can
Okay.
look up Tongue of the Fat Man. Great title. Number
Incredible.
Number 6, Virtues of Undead Chefs and Their Illegitimate Concerns Towards Your Manner of Dress.
I really thought like one of these was going to be a title I recognized. Again, that seems too wild not to be real.
Fake. That's one I made up. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very
okay.
much. Thank you very much. Number 7, Ninja Golf.
There has to have been a Ninja Golf at some point.
It's a side-scroller beat-'em-up mixed with teeing off. Yeah. So there you go.
Is that one also like from the 90s or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Number 8, I'm Sorry.
Real.
Real. The protagonist here was based upon former Japanese Prime Minister, and the game involved greedily nabbing all the gold bars while avoiding the likes of moonwalking Michael Jackson's, Madonna, sumo wrestlers, and track and field star Carl Lewis.
Huh.
I'm sorry.
That is so weird.
Number 9, no, you know what? I'm not sorry. Go fuck yourself.
Wait, that's the title?
Yeah.
Wait, no, that can't be real.
That's fake.
Okay. I was like fully on board until I was like, again, the fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Again, you can get away with that today, but I mean, it would be bleeped, but you couldn't even have a title like that
Right.
back then.
Number 10, I have no mouth and I must scream.
Okay, that one I do know is real.
All right. Yep. It's a point and click where you make ethical decisions. I also found a new game, or newish game. It's a Bill Cosby simulator where you offer pudding cups to the dad from Family Matters and then club him with a stick. And then
Oof.
if you don't do it in time, you get run over by Knight Rider. So you can find that if you just type in Bill Cosby simulator.
Oh boy.
Okay, moving right along.
That's the version of arcade I really don't want to get stuck
No.
in. That would be the true nightmare.
Yeah, seriously. RoboCop. Did I catch you in time? Are you still there? Remember when Paul McCrane gets all melty from toxic waste and then splats on a car? Imagine that movie without that scene. Would it still be good? Okay, bad example, RoboCop rules, but his death adds flavor. And you know what else adds flavor? Marshall's Hot Sauce. You can wake up any boring meal with habanero carrot curry or serrano ginger lemongrass, just to name a few. These delicious and flavorful sauces will have you grinning bigger than Tarman in Return of the Living Dead. Marshall's Hot Sauce even has a new line of seasonings, including an incredible barbecue rub, where they soak dates in whiskey and then freeze-dry them and powder them to add a little sweetness with no added sugar. There's also chicken marinade and even a volcano sparkle that'll make your body melt, just like in the movie Body Melt. The best part is you can enter VHUS Podcast at checkout for 20% off. So liven up those meals and your taste buds at marshallshotsauce.com and enter VHS Podcast for 20% off. And now, back to the show. Back in the film, they arrive, and a guy at the desk says they can't see anyone without an appointment, so Nick lays it all out for him. I love Secretary Guy. He has the weirdest filing system on his desk. Did you see this? It looks like what you'd use to serve like tacos at like a sports bar or something, and they just have like some pieces of paper stuck in. It's
Okay.
complete chaos. If you rewatch the film, look at what's on his desk. I love looking at what's on desks in movies, and it is the weirdest. It's total chaos.
That is also a great scene because you see Peter Billingsley do this very awkward, like trying to like muscle his way
Yeah.
through the interaction by being like, "There's gonna be all sorts of chaos and blood of virgins," and she kind of gives him a pat on the back afterwards, but like I don't know that he fully sells it.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. So they sit down, and you see that the doors in this place are so futuristic. They have like fire hoses for handles, and then when they're sitting down, there's 90s fractal images on the walls, on
Oh, I didn't even see that.
above each of their chairs, and in between them is a picture of a close up of a guy in sunglasses. And
Okay, I remember that one.
yeah, those fractal images were like super popular in the 90s. There was a store in malls called Natural Wonders, and they had magic eye postcards where
Yes.
you'd stare at the fractal images and then see a sailboat or a dolphin. Those
Yes.
those are just the two options. I don't understand why, but yeah, those
Those are the only things you can see.
right. So those were very popular, and I love that they've just taped them up on the wall. It's a great way to be like, look at how futuristic this place is. Difford comes out, and they're like, the game's killing people. So he's like, come meet the programmer, which I was like, wait, what? It's okay. So Difford takes
Well-
him to meet the programmer and learn some tricks.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, just teach them some things so they can beat their friends. I'm like, I don't know that that's what they're there for. Also, I feel like this office is like a Kubrickian nightmare of geometry, where like they call back to Difford to come up there, and it feels like it's like a whole big journey to, or like I don't know. It feels like there's a bunch of time between when they call him and when he gets there. But when he walks them back, you realize his office is like kitty corner to the desk where the
Yes.
secretary sits. So it's like the first door when they walk in, and it
Yeah.
feels like it just, I don't know, it's just weird, like feels like a dramatic buildup, and then it just fully deflates. And like, oh, I guess we're just going back to that room. Okay.
Yeah, the secretary's, he seems pretty obsolete, actually. It's very, I mean, yeah. I love that
Yeah.
his door was like right there. And so Albert shows them the schematics for the game, and they use an
Yeah.
Atari-looking screen to see the maze and doors, and we learn that there's keys that lead to the heart of arcade. It's a wild breakdown for what this game is.
Now pay attention, all right? Now, that's the virtual world. The virtual world consists of 7 levels. Now, each level has an exit, a doorway out of that world. Now, the doorways aren't always what they seem, but at least the schematic will show us where they are. So in each world, you have to find the doorway to the next level. And with it, a key. 6 in all.
How do you beat the game?
Right. The keys. The keys are the key. See, they unlock Arcade's heart. From there, you can escape Arcade's brain back to our reality.
it's one of the craziest scenes of exposition because especially because when he suddenly says like and the only thing I can tell you is that it involves a donor. And if you go back and look, like they weren't even talking about anything like that.
Yeah.
They're still talking through like the keys, and then this was one of my favorite ADR lines where they cut back to him, and then it's clearly not Peter Billingsley saying, what aren't you telling us?
Yeah.
And that's when he just suddenly springs on them this thing that was like, wait, I didn't even know that we were in the realm of talking about having weird human donors for this science experiment. But I mean, I love it.
Yeah, and they just move on past it really quickly. Like,
Right?
There's no.
It's not that shocking.
Oh.
It's kind of like they're like a little bit aghast, but they're also like, yeah, this is kind of normal.
Yeah, they're like, huh, okay, well, back to the schematics of this video game.
I loved it. I loved the schematics. It's like a blueprint. It's like, again, it's one of those things where like for the movie's sake, we have to find a way to visualize this.
Yes.
But like, yeah, it's just, again, it's not how games are at all, but it's great.
And it's also not that helpful, this maze thing that they look at. I was like, how would you even spatially use this information in your brain? Like how, I don't know.
And he also even says, like, you won't necessarily know what the doors are, but this will at least tell you where they are. And so it's like,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Also, when we see them, they're doors. Like there's not once I was like, could that be a door? I'm like,
yeah,
that's
like it's a person and you walk through it.
Yeah.
Like, nope, no weird surprises.
No, it's a door and there's a key next to it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We learned that if a screamer gets you, then you're dead, which we kind of already knew before. But
Yeah.
also, are you? Because we'll get to Greg went in the mouth of a screamer, and spoiler alert, we're gonna see him again.
Yeah. As Ralphie says early on, it's like, is this a real death or a virtual death? And it's like, it's kind of both and kind of neither.
Sort of. It's like a timeout, kind of. He's like, just don't play the game. But I gave you all the schematics, so
Yeah.
okay. So they leave, and then he writes down Dante's Inferno, and I love that. I love movies where they do this, like over the shoulder of someone being like, "I'm gonna make note of this, Dante's Inferno."
Yes.
So they go there to activate it and decide to go in 2-player mode, which we didn't even know was popular because we thought there was one pair of gloves and one set of ocular goggles or whatever.
And it seems like they both just sit next to each other and stick their head together and do it somehow.
That's exactly what they do. It's great.
Like, okay.
Arcade is like, hey, how are you? And Alex is like, fuck you. I was like, what is this?
Nick, Alex, all of your friends are here.
We know what you are.
A heartless monster. I'm nothing compared to the pain of your world. You should know that, Alex.
Fuck you.
Animosity all of a sudden.
Yep.
In they go, and Alex has the schematics written on her arm. And I was like, that's even more confusing. You took whatever was going on, and she's like, now I've got this. And I was like, okay. Well, they find a green
Yeah.
key, and they go through a door into what I wrote down is psychedelic Egypt.
Yeah, I feel like all of this gets like fever dreamish in the last, like the third act.
Yeah, it's
As
what.
it's just like one weird environment for another.
Yeah, it's what I remember the most of this movie. So, like I said, up until this point, I was like, gosh, I remember this being way more like wild and strange and off kilter. And then once they get into the game together, I was like, oh, this is the whole part I remember. This is the
Yep.
whole thing. It actually does deliver on its weird promises.
Yep.
So they're in psychedelic Egypt. Nick barely gets scratched on the back, so we learn that the screamers are real. And then Nick is distracted by a glowing screensaver while Alex runs towards somebody who's bloody and sinking into quicksand water. Which character was this supposed to be?
This is another part where I was like, okay, I think this is when the kid just pops into the story and there's never like an introduction. He just suddenly is there.
Yeah. That's
I
who
think
sinks?
this is him.
Okay. I couldn't tell because there's all this stuff on him. And yeah, okay. That's
But wait, no, you're right.
because they say a name,
Wait.
but I was like, it's not
I
Nick,
don't-
it's not Greg, it's not Seth Green. I was like, who is this character? He's like bleeding out of his eyes, so it makes it really hard to recognize him.
You're right. For the longest time in my head, I was like, it's the other person that's not Seth Green, but that's the girl that we meet later.
Right.
That's also So I actually have zero clue
Yeah.
who that person
Okay,
is.
cool. I didn't know. I rewound it. I've seen this before, and I was still just like, it's not important. We'll just move right along. Suddenly, she sees her mom's face and then realizes, like, we've got to get out of here. Suddenly, from around a pyramid flies a winged metallic skeleton demon with laser sunglasses, and Nick is vaporized.
Nick, look out! Nick, don't look at the fragment. The screamer's coming! Nick! Nick!
Oh my god.
It's amazing.
Yep.
Zero notes. She leaps into the mud puddle thing, and then we see Nick unconscious in the game seat, and the designer is there, the game designer. She's trapped alone in the game, and she wakes up to find not one but two Grim Reapers and metallic sky swirl backgrounds, and it's Seth Green and Laurie, and they're
Yes.
super goth, and I love it.
Yeah. They're just the liar and the
Yeah.
called?
One
The truth
city is
teller?
the city of truth, and the other is the city of lies. And I was like, oh, I'm
Yes.
into this. Like, somebody saw Labyrinth and was like, remember those doors? Let's have Seth Green be
Yes.
one of those doors.
Let's do a weird riddle.
Yes.
Laurie. Stilts.
You may ask one of us a question. One tells the truth, the other lies. Who you ask remains your discretion. But if the answer's wrong, the questioner dies.
The city of truth is the place you seek. Either boatman will take you there. But the other city is dark and bleak. This is the teller of lies domain. Beware.
I am the liar. Where shall I take you?
I am the truth teller. Where should I take you?
What did he do to you?
Is that your question?
No, wait. No, that's not it. Oh, okay. I want the city of truth. So I want the truth teller. But which one is which?
You have no time. What is your question?
I'm thinking.
You have no time.
Okay. What did he say? The riddle involves a paradox. Liar. Did you come from the city on the left or the city on the right?
I came from the city on the left.
But you always lie. So you didn't come from the city on the left, which means the city on the left is a city of truth. Too late. You're taking me to the city on the left.
Which is great. You got to have that in the game.
Yes.
Uh,
She outsmarts him pretty well.
super fast, really.
Yeah, I know. She's like, oh yeah, he's the liar, obviously.
Yeah, I didn't even get the logic. I was like, what? So then they get to the next city, and it's level 3, Seas of Darkness. She rescues a new player, which grants her a free life, and that's the little boy. And then they reach the City of Truth, which is awesome. It's an empty future metropolis. They enter a rainbow metallic sphere that becomes a spaceship, and they start speeding along the ground when suddenly 2 ships with skull faces appear behind them, and the kid says, "It's the Dark Riders. If they touch us, we're dead."
Yes. This is the chase scene that you said that was originally okay.
Yeah, this is light bikes.
Chase scene is crazy.
Yes. So I don't.
It's very video gaming in a way that's like, again, feels true to what it's trying to do.
Yeah. I have to refresh myself on the light bike original thing because I don't know if they just plugged stuff in. I haven't seen it in so long, but I just don't know how much time they had for this section of the film because this was supposed to be a big like in Tron where everyone loves the light bikes and everyone was like, I want to go through that experience, and now it's like a Disney ride and stuff. This was like that for arcade, and then they got sued and had to change it to the Dark Riders, and I don't know. It's I think it's still really fascinating to watch how it plays out. They race around. One Dark Rider hits a building and explodes into a billion shards. It's pretty great. The other hits a giant spinning key as they go through that's like super like platformer. Like there's interesting things the way this game is put together, and it's like, okay, so in this sequence there's a platformer kind of thing, there's a racing thing, there's a riddle part from which would be more like, I guess, a point and click or something. And then they've combined all these different aspects of games that makes up the VR experience, which none of it involves, I mean, very little of it involves touching something, which is why they have those gloves.
Yeah. Funny enough, though, once we started getting to this stage and it just became like this key chase, I was like, oh, this is so what Ready Player One is too.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's funny that this does have so many of those elements. Again, this another thing that's made me think of while watching it was Class of '99,
Right.
which when you realize the date that came out, it's like ahead of, I think, T2.
Mm-hmm.
It's ahead of these other things that are like noted for tackling like people and robots, and it actually like does a lot of that work like a year or two beforehand and just doesn't get noticed because it's, you know, a schlockier picture.
Yeah, and I feel like the special effects for the melting through the bars in T2 and the reformation of the head was just like so like, oh my gosh, like, you know, it was just so cool. But I mean, being in the video store, I was a class of 1999 kid, so I was like, this rules. Pam Grier's awesome. This is amazing. And then, you know, T2 was more like a blockbuster. You know, it's like a huge thing with the 7-Eleven cups and stuff. You know, class of 1999 didn't have that kind of tie-in.
Yeah.
People would have been so confused.
The other thing was the key stuff reminded me of, I cannot think what the name of the game is, but I feel like there's an old PC game that I feel like my brother used to and I used to play. Chips Challenge, is that what it's called? But it was like, it involved basically going around. I think you had to avoid mice, and then also you were like finding keys to open doors, which obviously that's a very common trope in video games. But like, I don't know, something about the key in this just reminded me of that. So yeah, to your point, I think it's just like, as much as it is far afield of what video games are in so many ways, it does actually like ground itself in some actual relevant contemporary game stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if there was a version of the script where Arcade the Machine was pulling from the other arcade games, and the things that they were encountering were like stuff from the other, because I know they also couldn't show through licensing other games. They have like killer rats or something. There's some game they show that they painted the side of, but you can't even really see it's either TMNT or Simpsons game. You see for a glimpse in the background, but it's not in focus. You just know if you've lived through arcades, you're like, I know that glow. But I just think that there's something to that, like you said, because there's another game on the same console that we have for Miss Pac-Man where it's called like Dragons of something something, and it's just you walking through these long hallways to get a key, and then eventually they introduce like you said, a rat, but they'll be like a wizard or someone else that has a sword, and you have one button that extends a line. That's your sword, and it's very basic. It's a lot of walking, really.
Maybe that is the same game, because that sounds very much like it.
Okay,
like,
I'll send you a
But
picture.
also, again, that's a type, but
Sure.
yeah.
There was a lot of games where you had to get keys to open doors.
But again, for as early as this is, again, besides Tron, there wasn't a lot of other stuff that fully did this. And obviously the Tron influence is there, but like, I don't know. I do like that their version of the like Tron suits basically make them look like xenomorphs.
Yes. It's
Like,
a weird shaped helmet.
Yeah. It's just like a fun, like, we're going to do Horror Tron, or Horror Tron plus obviously like Nightmare on Elm Street is the one thing it's pulling from pretty clearly.
Yeah, which is pre-Trickster. So we hadn't had Brain Scan yet, so...
And where were they in the Nightmare series? Because again, it feels like it's a response to late era Freddy when he was saying bitch all the time.
Yeah, 90.
But that's not till like
91. So
Dream Warriors is when he.
I feel like that's the 80s, right? Is it? I get
that's
really
late 80s.
confused on.
I think
all of
actually,
it.
it's 88.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. So he'd at least made an appearance. But like this, again, another thing that I feel like parallels is When's Freddy's Dead? Because that's also doing like Freddy's playing video games with Breckin Meyer.
Right. Oh God. Yeah. Breckin Meyer's back in the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We should have string theoried all of this out and had a graph of some sort. But it's really interesting how much of it ends up in this movie. Next, they make it back to the arcade's inner sanctum, and it's level 6 where they find the arcade's soul. Okay.
Yeah, like again, I like the whole section of this, but it is hard to fully distinguish between the levels, kind of, or like when they make progress, it just kind of feels like one big level that they do multiple things in, just because it's so weird and nebulous.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have to tell us we're on a different level. Otherwise, we'd think it was all the same.
Yeah.
She yells, "Where are you?" And the arcade was the kid all along. Oh, he duped her. The kid they just introduced is Arcade.
Right. The only person it probably, could be in this situation.
It's so good.
Damn it, where are you?
Right here, bitch.
She opens a box, grabs the heart, and is shocked by it. But she wakes up in bed fine. She walks to the living room. Her mother is there. She's in the kitchen. She sits down and says, "I thought you were dead, Mom." And Mom says, "I am," and then blows her brains out. And I was like, Albert Pune's back, baby. Like,
I know.
whoa.
Again, another this poor girl whose entire arc is that she's been so traumatized by her mom's suicide, then has to witness it
Face to
fully
face
this time after she thinks she's got her back. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah. And then she's like, "And I'll take you too." And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. And then she shoots Alex in the head. It's really awesome. Arcade says,
Yeah.
"I can bring your soul back and we can play again and again and again." So she's going to be stuck in this purgatory of her mother killing herself over and over and over.
Yeah. Again, surprisingly dark for
Yes.
a movie this time about teens. Because, maybe we'll get to it when we get to the final thoughts. But, weirdly enough, the thing this movie kept reminding me of was Talk to Me from last year. Because it is
Right.
also about a girl who's struggling with her mom's suicide and, going to great lengths to sort of reach her and, because she's not dealing with her grief. But, it's just such a sillier, I don't know. It's just weird to see this, so much earlier and hitting on some of those things. And I don't know. It's cool.
In some arcades, you'll see the arm wrestling machine. Have you ever seen
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Imagine a Talk to Me arcade game where it's the hand.
Oh my God.
And you could have the VR goggles now they have for the Rabbids games or whatever. And you put it on, you
That
grab
would be
it.
incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to replicate some kind of or make a little mock up of it. I love that idea.
Honestly, I could imagine A24 going to the lengths of at
Yes.
least making one of them.
Right. They should for some big horror con. Something I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about aspects of video games and characters and things is this being a full moon. I expected way more arcade creatures, because they love Puppet Master and Subspecies and these things where they introduce tiny little creatures, demonic toys and all that. But they just do one screamer, and then Arcade has a face. But I just thought they'd have a ton more things. I get so excited when we get to that mud puddle thing because I'm like, oh, this is an actual set that they built, or when Peter and I like that I'm using his name and then her character name, but Peter and Nick Alex wake up in the game and there's these two lumps in front of them that creates a foreground for them so they're not just on a big empty space, but it's clearly spray painted foam or something. It's just I love that stuff. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting into final thoughts here.
Oh, no. They clearly are stretching there, but in a good way.
Yeah. Back in the movie, the free life is at play, and she throws Arcade's heart into Arcade's face and beats the game. That's all right.
Yeah.
So
it feels weird.
It feels so weird that she's just I got a free life, and he's like, oh no, and then she throws his heart in his face.
Especially because they establish she's very bad at video games.
Yeah, yes.
And so this feels like something that Peter Billingsley character would be able to intuit and pull off this sneak attack or whatever, and be like, oh, he's not thinking about this rule. When Delancey calls on her to play, Seth Green's like, no, don't ask her.
Right.
She'll just lose immediately. So I don't know, it's just such a weird thing for her to suddenly then be like, I'm the best at this, I know what to do.
And I think, I'm nitpicking, but if she had held the heart and leapt into the mouth of Arcade or something, some kind of sacrificial thing.
Yes.
Then I'm all in. But I'm just also adverse to sports. So she lives, and Greg does too, and everyone else does. So they're all fine. Off they go, and the programmer is just standing there, and I was like, oh, is he Arcade now? But then he just meanders off, and I was just like, oh, okay. She walks up to her house, and suddenly behind her is a little boy who says,
right here.
Bitch.
Right here, bitch. And I was just like,
yeah. So wild. The way it is such a weird, confused tension where when they walk out, she's like, well, we escaped. What if Arcade escaped too?
Yeah.
And they're like, nah. And she's like, yeah. And like even the music comes in and it's like, it's cool, guys. Don't worry about it. And they like walk off fine. And we linger for a long time. And then, yeah, we finally get back to it. But it's like, am I supposed to think that Arcade got out? Why would I even think that's a possibility?
Yeah.
Until you just said it. It's clearly like the Nightmare on Elm Street, like producers forcing the ending to leave the room for a sequel. So they're like, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But he got out and he followed her home.
Yeah. And then it says kiss reality goodbye. And then we get our credits. It's pretty amazing. I'm shocked they didn't do an Arcade 2, but I guess probably everything was soured by the Disney suing.
Yeah.
You know, but that Mark, pushed it back for 3 years. But yeah, final thoughts on Arcade.
It is incredibly fun. It's like Bless the Child ended up being. It's like of a particular genre of schlock that I love, where it's like, again, this reminds me of Stay Alive was the other video game one from like 2006.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of some better ones like Sequence Break and Beyond the Gates.
Oh yeah, that was super fun.
I also just love games, and especially games from like the 90s and stuff. So like that this is basically just a horror movie about that era is like awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can struggle with Full Moon stuff, but again, I think it's a case where like Albert Pune will take a non-existent script and at least make it feel like a movie, which feels like nothing, but it's like, no, you don't understand how many people can't do that, and they can't keep you invested, and he still can't, even if there's like kind of nothing propelling you besides like his craft or the stuff he's pulled together. So yeah,
no, I think
that's
that's
very fun.
Really well said. My soft spot for Full Moon comes from seeing all of that stuff when it came out, like the Puppet Master stuff and all those things. And I think even when they weren't fun, convincing myself they're fun because of the stop motion animation aspect to it. Whereas if it was just all CG, I probably would have been like, yeah, I'm good. But seeing
again, someone put craft into it.
Yeah,
like that's like that's
exactly.
Awesome.
And just knowing like Charles Band saw like what's the guy's name? Harryhausen.
Yeah.
What's
Ray Harryhausen.
There. Saw Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, I think we were splitting it up into two names. I was like,
what am I doing? Saw that early stop motion stuff, and it just like propelled him to like create like all of these different things where there's like these little toy things, but not doing toy lines really till way later. And Arcade just feels like it's of its time. And I love movies like that. Like it's not like this will be a timeless thing forever. They think that at the time, but then technology progresses and then you look back on it and you're like, oh, it's dated, but like it was them trying their best at that time. And in the making of, there's people that are just like, this will be the best thing that's ever existed forever. And you're just like, whoa. I mean, you have to believe that when you're doing it. And I think at least the animation people, they certainly did. So I think it's pretty fun. And I think seeing Seth Green in there is a blast. If you buy the DVD, they waste no time putting up front everyone's complete new credits on the front of the DVD. So you're looking at it, it's like, really? Yeah. Let me grab it real quick. Okay, so here is the DVD for Arcade. And right at the top, you can see it says Megan Ward, star of They Live, Peter Billingsley, star of A Christmas Story, Seth Green of Robot Chicken. And then at the bottom, screenplay written by David S. Goyer, Batman vs. Superman, Man of Steel, Dark Knight Rises, and Blade 2. Like all shamelessly put. It's so good.
Yeah. I would say, like, I was expecting Seth Green to be the protagonist and was surprised that it ended up being Peter Billingsley, but I actually think it was like kind of a pleasant surprise because he doesn't show up in a lot as leads. It's outside of A Christmas Story. I feel like, I mean, he showed up, I feel like as an adult more now in random, one-off roles, but like actually seeing Ralphie do something else is at least fun and novel. Was he also Ralphie in the sequel? There was that like pseudo sequel that was something called Summer One.
Yeah.
I saw it. I don't remember if he was in it, but it still felt interesting.
All right. Do you have anything else before we move on?
I mean, the name of the company was incredible. Vertigotronics.
Vertigotronics is two separate words too.
It's just some tech gobbledygook, but I love it. And yeah, I don't know. Again, I like how, again, especially for a movie that's pitched at high schoolers, I love how dark it kind of ends up being in so many ways.
There's a lot of blood. Like, I mean, Alex gets really bloodied as the movie progresses. She's got all these rips in her outfit that are bloody. I feel like Pune really did the best with what he could and tried to give it some real dark edge, which is very fun.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating little film. Nolan, where can people find you?
You can still find me on Twitter at Nolan_McBride. Think I have a Blue Sky, but I have still kind of not touched it. As much as Twitter's not been great, it's still just like I'm too lazy to post too many places right now. It's like that's where I've been posting. It's going to take a lot for me to just move. So it's just inertia more than anything. But yeah, I'm still posting on there sometimes. And Dead Ringers will be back within the next month or so, I think. So
there it is. You heard it here first. Well, Nolan, thank you for coming back and for watching Arcade.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. This was a blast.
As always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VH Us.
Right here.
Bitch.